There's a couple of people, or a couple of players that I would put forward that I think should be in the squad. And the one at the forefront of my mind right now is Luke McCowan. Now, I know Scotland are blessed in the midfield. It's where we're strongest. I mean, if Lewis Ferguson can't even get a regular game, it doesn't bode well for someone like Luke McCowan. But every time McCowan plays for Celtic, he makes an impact. Even if it's off the bench, he
I
just
don't disagree.
stands out.
I've been really impressed by Luke McCowan in a Celtic shirt. It certainly doesn't look too big for him.
Aye.
He's handled the step up in class from Dundee to Celtic. He's taken it in his stride. He does impress me every time I see him. But Daniel, we're talking fleeting glimpses here, really. I'm afraid he'd need to be doing more than just throwing on the odd occasional decent cameo to break his way into Steve Clarke's Scotland squad. I think there would be noses out of joint if that was to be the case, and understandably so. That doesn't mean that Luke McCowan doesn't have the quality to be a Scotland player. Everything I've seen about him suggests that he probably does. But I think he'd need to get a regular run of starts before he was really banging on Steve Clarke's door. You know that Steve Clarke's really loyal to his players. Perhaps some people will say too much so. But in order for to promote somebody in there, I think Luke McCowan would need to get a run, a real proper run of starts in Celtic's midfield, rather than just looking good from the bench for 15-20 minutes. And he does look really good.
Aye.
And I am really interested to see what the progression is, because many times I've said in this show, Brendan Rodgers makes players better. That's what he does. So Luke McCowan was already in a very strong position in terms of his natural ability. He's certainly a confident young guy, because he's walked into that squad. He's looked around. He's a Celtic fan. He knows the quality. He knows the names, and that might have been quite intimidating for some people. But he's shown that he's got the mental strength, the mental capacity to go in there and say, "I'm as good as you guys." Aye. And every time I've seen him play, he does look as good. But I just think that would be the hard part to justify putting him in on the back of being a really good Celtic substitute.
I think that's fair. After taking a pummeling for saying that I couldn't see by Barry Ferguson if he wins the next two games, I'm now getting slaughtered for for the Luke McCowan shout as well. So I'm having a good night.
I read you blinker, didn't you?
Marzino says Scotland are stacked in midfield, as you say, Daniel. Craigie says Conor Barron instead of McGowan. I like Conor Barron, good player, but I don't know about that.
Conor Barron had made the squad previously.
Aye.
And got there in merit because, for the exact same things as we were just saying, he was playing regularly in that Rangers midfield. Conor Barnes dropped out of the picture. I know that he started against Fenerbahce, and I think he'll probably start again on Thursday night. He might retain his place around the Scotland squad because he's been there before, but I think he might struggle on the same basis that he hasn't started out all that many games recently, has he? Fenerbahce, I think, was probably his first start, and
he was out in the wilderness a little bit, wasn't he? Under Clement towards the end.
Yeah, and when Barry Ferguson, he's only had 3 games, but he didn't start the first 2 of them either. So it'll be interesting to see if Conor Barron retains his place in Steve Clarke's squad. I think he might suffer the same as we're just talking about Luke McCowan. If you're not playing regularly week in, week out for your club, it's difficult to justify, not in all cases, because there's been obviously famous, and Kieran Tierney's one of them, would struggle to get a game at Arsenal, but if he's fit and available, he'll be in Steve Clarke's plans, be no doubt about that. But I think you've got to earn yourself a certain status before you're considered as one of these guys that even if you're not playing regularly for your club, you have to be in the Scotland squad. We've seen examples of it, but they're more outliers than the sort of general rule. And the general rule of thumb is that you're going to have to be playing and impressing week in, week out to make it into Steve Clarke's plans.
Rebel, as you can see, says, I agree, Keith, he needs to be a Celtic regular. Marzuno says, though, Ralston's played about 3 times for Celtic this season, and of course, recent times, he's been Scotland's first-choice right-back.
There are exceptions to every rule.
That's true, and there's injuries there, isn't there?
Yeah, and at fullback, obviously, Scotland have been really unlucky, down to the bare bones in terms of right back options, because of Hickey and Patterson injuries, and Patterson's one of these guys now that just doesn't seem. I think when David Moyes went to Everton, I wonder if Patterson might start to get a run here, a crack of the whip. But look, I haven't watched Everton all that closely, but I don't think he's been featuring as a starter.
No, he's not.
So he, it's a struggle for Nathan Patterson to justify